Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Connected Match Officials session with myself, Owen Taylor, one of the Match Official developers. And on tonight's call, we've got Michael Patz, the Match Official Development Manager. Tonight, we're going to be going through, you may have seen some stuff come out through World Rugby in the last week, in the last fortnight, around what's known as the shape of the game. And what we're hopefully going to do is be able to take us through some of the findings that came out from that, and also what that means to us as community match officials, but also the differences that you might see on the telly. So, Michael, obviously you're sort of involved from a World Rugby perspective in kind of being involved in what they talk about from a law changes and clarifications and things like that. So, kind of what's the big headline coming out of this shaping the game?
Thanks, Owen, and welcome everyone. It's great to join you this evening. I think the essence of the starting point is that we're looking at trying to speed up the game. So we've got current laws in place, and it's the same with a lot of these things that they're brought in with good intent. They're brought in to try and speed up the game or make the game safer, primarily, and sometimes other things get in the way or they get forgotten. So the essence around the shape of the game is to keep driving that safety message, keep driving the speed of the game around that, which from my point of view as a referee, speed isn't always essential from my perspective from players, but I get what they're trying to do. So I think if we start going through the laws of the clarifications we've had now, then let's see how we can sort of discuss that with the guys and girls on the call, please.
Yeah, and exactly like you've just said there, these are all existing laws that basically World Rugby are just saying, look, can we start adhering to them slightly more strictly, a little bit more letter to the law, let's say. And it is in order to keep the game flowing and reduce those unnecessary stoppages in the game. And one of these in particular is kind of is more specific, or the environment would be looking at that to occur, and is solely in the elite game. But there's certainly some learnings that we as community match officials can take from them as well. So if we have a look at kind of what we're being asked to do, the first one is around caterpillar rucks. Now, obviously, they get a little bit of bad press. It takes a long time for them to form. Big box kicks and things like that, but realistically, the law isn't changing. So the law itself in red, which is 15-17, when the ball has been clearly won by a team at the ruck and is available to be played, the referee calls use it, after which the ball must be played away from the ruck within 5 seconds. And if we don't see that, then we should be having a scrum. So, Patsy, what are the clarifications that have come in, and what are World Rugby hoping that's going to change with what they've said?
So I think, as you just say there, I mean, it's around getting players to speed up playing the ball, and to prevent that elongated effect of that caterpillar looking, where you've got player after player after player being added, and sometimes that will occur currently that occurs after the referee has called used it. So we're looking to restrict that, and they talk there about when the ball is being drawn backwards, it's using the foot. So they're saying that the foot, if it's drawn back, is actually at that point, once the ball is clearly available, that's when we're looking to ask the 9 or whoever's playing 9, the scrum half position, to use that ball. I think it's really important here around the pre-match and that management of that, but I think we're going to go through that in a few slides time. So we'll wait until we get to that point.
Absolutely, that's our first one. So we're followed up with 2 more on the next slide, and one's around the break foot, which is still, I suppose, something fairly new into the game, isn't it? It's a couple of years old, and then there's a section about the water carriers which came in 2022, but that one's solely for the elite game. So if we just concentrate on the break foot again, Patsy, what are we wanting at scrum time in terms of a break foot?
I think it's actually seeing that foot from the hookers. So we want to see that in the tunnel. So again, it's thinking about our position, particularly at the tunnel, when we're setting that scrum, making sure that our sequence allows for an adjustment when we call the bind, because clearly if the hooker isn't ready at that point, they may adjust that foot, but we want to see the foot remain there until set is called. So it's about that stability. It's about avoiding the additional weight coming through the necks of certainly the hookers, but it also comes through the necks of the props. We know that. So it's providing that's we know the gap is there if we know the foot is there, is the way to look at it.
Absolutely, and it provides stability. It helps with safety. Again, you talked a little bit about that axial loading. That was probably the buzz term that we kind of heard a lot of when this break foot came in. You know, that axial loading through the neck of certainly through the hooker. But I think what maybe we have been seeing in the game is what could probably be described as a half break foot. You would maybe hear that term a little bit, half break foot. So if we look at that second bullet point, you know, it is permissible to adjust the position of the break foot, but it must still be seen to act as a full break foot. You know, again, foot on the floor, planted, keeping that hooker in a good stable position to allow us to go through our crouch bind set. So that's what has come out from World Rugby. The third one at the bottom, as I said, it was around water carriers. I think it was July 2022 where they started talking about, you know, lots of water carriers on the field, lots of stoppages of play, lots of extra bodies on the field. So in the elite game, we were seeing too many water carriers too often, and slowing it down with increased stoppages. So we'll talk a little bit about what we might see from an elite perspective in this next slide, which we've titled "What Might We See on the TV?" Okay, so again, the whole point of speeding up the game, we want to bring more fans. We've got a different demographic. You know, things are starting to change. We want that speed, that excitement, that jeopardy in our game, and potentially these three things are going to help impact some of that speed. So, Michael, in terms of the number one, which alludes to the caterpillar rucks,
Yep.
what are we going to be expecting to see on the TV, and what of the referees in those elite competitions? What have they kind of been briefed going forward?
Well, I think if I drop to the second point, OT, it's around remembering values from both sides. You know, we talk about that appealing side of things. So let's make sure that if we have called use it, and certainly on TV, the match officials, referees will be looking to ensure the players don't start counting down for us. And then when you actually look at that usable piece, it's around being sensible about it. If the ball isn't there ready to go, then again, don't put yourself under pressure. And the TV match officials will be doing a similar thing. They'll be going through that process. Don't make yourself the centre of attention, and be sensible about it. So it's. I think we saw it last weekend as it came in. Clearly, there's some adjustment to do because teams have been playing this all season. There's only 3, 4, 5 rounds to go or something in the league season from that point of view. So to get them to adjust it rapidly will be a challenge from a TV perspective. So I don't think there'll be major changes that we will see, but it'll be more around that encouragement, and I think teams will react positively to it as we saw last weekend.
Fantastic. And if we look at number 2 and number 3, I think what the PGMOT are potentially looking to do, so that's the professional game match official team, is kind of hopefully they're already in a good place with these things. But again, what it's alluding back to, you know, we're just going to try and be a little bit more stringent, a little bit more strict, and a bit more letter to the law. So their approach is going to be, you know, there's no real change as to how the scrum will be officiated with the break foot. You know, we're obviously going to be keeping a slightly tighter look on it, and again, probably looking for that fuller break foot rather than that half break foot. But as we say, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's still an area of the game that we have been officiating. And thirdly, water carriers will only be allowed onto the pitch after a try is scored, or when the referee permits them to enter the field of play. So, for example, you know, if there's been a long injury or a long stoppage, we would probably expect to see water carriers come on the pitch. What I think we won't see, and what's been slightly different since those laws came in at the elite game, is again we don't see people with water bottles just running on at every single stoppage, you know, all the time. We've got the sort of basket of water coming on. We're seeing that a lot less. You know, if we imagine it takes 15 seconds for somebody to run onto the pitch, when we're ready to get going, you know, we've got to wait 15 seconds for that individual to then leave the pitch. So over a period of a game, it only takes half a dozen of those things to happen, and we're starting to get into the minutes of extra time that we're waiting, aren't we? So we do have the opportunity for a question and answer session as part of this webinar. So I appreciate some people might be interested in delving a little bit deeper into what we might see on the telly. But if you do have something, please pop it in the question and answer, and myself and Michael will keep an eye out on that. But I think we'll go next on to stuff that's going to be really pertinent for us in the community game. So again, Michael, I'll let you take number one if you like. You've kind of it's
I've started, haven't I? So
yeah, it's very similar, I think, to what the referees on the professional game are looking to try and attempt. But what do we think that we should be expecting to do as community match officials?
I think, Owen, it starts before we get out on the pitch. It's during that pre-match brief and that conversations we're having. We obviously have a chat with the front rows as an obligation on us, but I think it's important to chat to the 9 or the players who are playing scrum half, and say to them that this is how I'm looking to referee it today. So there's no surprises there. And then it's just taking that common sense approach around giving players time to secure the ball, as it says there. So they're still rolling it back underneath a player. Let's give them that opportunity to get it to the back of the hindmost foot before we call use it, because otherwise it's going to put pressure on us as well. We've got to think about that. Let's not pressurize ourselves. There are more important things to worry about, if I'm honest, than putting pressure on ourselves from that perspective. And again, it's that thing of where it says there, the ball is readily available. If additional players are going to come in and start building on the back of that caterpillar ruck, that's the time that we've got to be encouraging them to play it away. We don't want to see another 2-3 players on the back of that and then them rolling it further down. That's what this is trying to get rid of and trying to avoid. And again, you can do that during pre-match, make it clear to the scrum half that once I've called use it, no one else joins that ruck. The challenge around that, of course, is the ruck's potentially going to be dynamic. And if someone's trying to counter ruck, then we've got to be mindful of that as well. So let's just make sure we're clear in our own mind of what that looks like. Giving a scrum, as it says there, has got to be the last resort. If I give you an example, you have a kickoff, receiving team, take the ball down, a ruck forms, you call use it on it. They don't use it quickly enough, you give a scrum, they give away a penalty, and it's 3 points in front of the post. So, let's think about where we are on the pitch. Let's be smart with that around how we're looking at building our management around that. And again, I mentioned this on the previous slide. We've got to remember the values. I think we've been doing really well with that this year. Certainly, players seem to be working a lot better with us across the piece in the community game around understanding what we're trying to do, and that just comes down to communication. So let's make sure we haven't got players who are counting down for us. I think most of us on the call will be able to count down from 5 or count up to 5, whichever way we wish to go with it. And I'm sure that the players will respect us if we just ask them to stay calm and let us control how long 5 seconds takes. The same applies to the maul, doesn't it? So we don't get them shouting at us in the maul that's 5 seconds. So it shouldn't start happening to a ruck, can it?
Exactly. And I think the big thing for me, it's about probably you talked in the pre-match brief, it's a little bit of expectation management. That the players aren't necessarily going to know what to expect. Are these changes massive, grand changes? And I suppose that's the reason for this call tonight, is to go, we can be very sensible, we can very common sense sort of based in our approach to this. Let's use our effective communication skills. Let's use our voice. Let's use our preventative refereeing in order to add value to the game. This is about speed and about trying to inject sort of that quick play. If we imagine every time we give that scrum for not using it, that's another minute or so out of the game. So if we truly want to encourage that speed, we'll put pressure on the players, let's say, to adhere to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So you've got a question there, Owen. Just before you go on that, I've seen the question, so I'll get you to answer it for me. Just Steve James asks around the signal for not using the ball within 5 seconds. So
we would,
it's around awarding that scrum, isn't it? So.
yeah, so we would use our effective communication skills again. If we think whistle, signal, voice, what type of whistle would we be expecting? A little bit of a peep, something to get everybody to stop. Then obviously we'd have our primary signal of our scrum, and then we'd be putting out to the side that's been awarded the scrum. I think in this instance, we do sometimes talk about, when there's knock-ons, we almost don't do that scrum signal. But I think from this perspective, if we really want to be clear and accurate in our effective communication, we've got the opportunity to be really big and clear with everybody understanding what's coming next.
Thanks, OT.
Thanks, Steve. That's great. In terms of the second and third piece, the breakfoot wants to be all the way through the scrum. I think from our perspective, we've got the opportunity to remind the hookers, probably in the pre-match brief and potentially live, is about, the reason that we're doing this is for safety, and it's certainly for stability. What we do have to do is about giving them time to adjust. It says in the clarifications that have come out, there will be adjustments made by the hooker. So let's give them that time, and let's do that by considering our cadence. Do we really want our crouch bind set to be that quick? Does it want to be crouch bind set, or do we really want to give them chance to get in that good crouch position, in that good scrummaging position, give them time to bind and move their feet and make the adjustments, and then the foot will come back on set. In terms of whenever we give any sanctions, let's think about the desk principle, which is obviously describe, explain, sanction, confirm. So even if we're maybe seeing a bit of a half break foot, let's describe to the hooker what we're seeing. Let's explain why we need them to have that in, and then before we have to go down the sanction route, we're already starting to paint some pictures or tee up some decisions that we may or may not have to make. And the final one, obviously, it's in big, bold, and blue. That law only affects the elite game. So in the community game, water carriers, etc., and when they can come on, it is completely different. Let's think about safety. Let's think about making sure that players have got the opportunity to have a rest and a drink, and certainly some of the referees having a rest of a drink. I think of myself.
Yeah.
But what I would say again is it's about protecting ourselves as the official. I would say, we don't want, as the community game, loads of people coming on with water bottles every single stoppage, because again, we want a fast, exciting, Jeopardy type game as well, don't we? So fantastic. So again, if anybody's got any questions around what it means for community match officials, please do again put them in the Q&A. I suppose before we look to finish, Michael, we've obviously got a few bits on there, a few sort of tips and tricks of maybe how we would go out on Saturday. From your perspective as a kind of current practitioner, what does any of this worry you? Is there anything that's worrying for you, or how do these make you feel?
No, I think, I mean, from this point of view, it's just around reinforcing existing law, isn't it? There is nothing on there that doesn't currently happen. The use it call, from my perspective, I'm not a big use of that term. I have to be honest. I'll give the players that opportunity, but once the ball is clearly there, I'll ask them to use it. The same with the break foot. Is getting into that position where you're taking that step back, so you've got a good view into the tunnel. Also helps around that credible feed, doesn't it? So we've got the view over the top with the props to the far side, and we've got that view of the hookers' feet are down. Once they're lifted, hopefully it speeds the ball going in as well. So no, those two don't have any major issues. The water carrier piece. Sometimes it's great if teams have got water carriers to actually bring some water on at the level I referee at. So again, it's just having that management of it and talking to people beforehand. So I'll chat to physios and say, look, if you've got an injury, please come on. In the same way, I'll talk to water carriers and say, once there's been a score, if I call you by all means come on if there's an injury, etc., and give them some parameters to work to. So it's setting those expectations as you talked about, OT. And I think that these three sort of law application guidelines have come in now. People will be aware, as we've talked about the shape of the game, that there's a number of recommendations coming up around various laws for law amendment and a global trial of those laws, if you like. So people will be aware of what those are because World Rugby's talked about them. But these are the only 3 at the moment that have been sort of brought to the front that we're actually applying. So where people have talked about, crocodile rolls, etc. That's already been talked about in front of kicker, a 20-minute red card. Some of those trials are going on in other competitions. So Super Rugby's live at the moment, and they've got a trial around the in front of the kicker type of thing. We've just got to remember that doesn't apply up here. So let's make sure that we're aware and current of which ones are coming in. And we'll be doing some more of these connected match officials sessions, Owen. You'll be pleased to know. So we'll have to keep on top of the laws. But we'll be sort of cascading that out through calls like this, and also through our referee societies, to make sure that once those closed trials come in, whichever ones we adopt, assuming that we will adopt some of them, we'll make sure it's clear, and as we've done this evening with these application guidelines.
Absolutely awesome. So look, nice sort of short, sharp session on this one. What I would say is, just if you do have any problems or anything, please do rewatch the webinar, or please do head over to the World Rugby website so you're familiar with those law changes that are happening over here. But what we would say is thanks everybody for their time. Good luck tomorrow for people out on a Wednesday. Good luck for the people on the weekend, and we'll see you on another Connected Match Officials call sometime soon.